our basic well-being. Rachel? So just to let you know, the different advocacy organizations are going to go in order. And then we'll have about 20 minutes of discussion at the end. Then we'll move into working groups.
In order to advance, do I? Okay,
You
so
tell
I'll
me.
stand there.
Okay.
Do you need me to?
You can have the mic.
Okay. All right, so good evening, everybody. I'm Rachel Filippini with GASP, and I'm going to try to take a 20-minute PowerPoint and do it in 7 minutes. So, GASP has been around 50 years working to improve air quality in southwestern Pennsylvania. We do that through education, advocacy, legal work, policy work. And so just a few basic slides to make sure we're all on the same page with how air quality affects our health, and some local stats that I think are pretty important. First of all, Pittsburgh, while we have improved significantly over the last 5 decades since GASP formed, we are still one of the worst in terms of air pollution in the entire country. We are ranked as one of the top 10 most polluted cities in the nation with regard to year-round particle pollution. We have very high cancer rates due to exposure to air toxics, the top 2%. And it's not just based on one monitor. I think you might hear that a lot. Oh, it's just that Liberty Clairton monitor. When you look at the data for a span of several years, you'll see that often multiple monitors are putting us in the worst ranking. So if you've heard that, it's just that one monitor. That's just not true. Now I don't know what to do. Okay. So why do we care about this issue? Why is GASP still around 50 years later? Because air pollution is continuing to make people sick, ruin quality of life, and negatively impacting people. We know that research shows that air pollution is linked to just about everything, from heart disease to cancer to asthma. Now there's dementia and diabetes and so many things that you hear about. It's about quality of life. If you can't go outside and exercise because something is stinking in the air, then that affects your quality of life. If you can't open up your windows on a nice evening because some smell is coming into your home, that's quality of life. If you worry about letting your kids out to play, quality of life. If your child has an asthma attack and they can't go to school, and now you can't go to work, that affects your ability to earn and your child's ability to learn. That affects your entire family dynamics and entire communities. We know that people and companies may not want to move to this region because of the type of air quality we have. So it affects the entire community. Okay. So it's still a significant health concern. I'm just going to go through these really quickly. As I said, when people think about air pollution, they often think about asthma. That's the first thing you think about. But it's not just asthma. It affects just about every part of your body. And it's not just me as an environmental activist saying this. This is a slide from the EPA saying, since 2016, there have been nearly 3,000 different publications looking at how air pollution affects different parts of your body. And it seems like every week there's a new study coming out that talks about how especially particulates affect the human body. When we say air pollution, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about many things in the air, including these 6 criteria air pollutants. These sulfur dioxide and particulate matter, we are currently in non-attainment for these 2 pollutants. That means we are not meeting the federal-based standards for these. We have to come up with a plan to get our region into attainment for these 2 pollutants, and we may be out for ozone as well in the future. So where are these pollutants coming from? They're coming from mobile sources, stationary sources. They're coming from large stationary sources in our community known as Tidal V or major sources. There are more than 30 of those in Allegheny County alone. Many minor sources, diesel, construction equipment, your car, all these different sources are impacting our airshed. Everyone is at risk for air pollution. None of us is immune, but there are some populations that are especially vulnerable. Our children whose bodies, whose lungs, brains, organs are still developing. The elderly and those with underlying health conditions, COPD, things like that. Athletes who want to be exercising regularly outside and are taking in more air are being exposed to more air pollution. Pregnant women and their unborn children. those who work in an occupational setting where you are exposed to more air pollution, and of course, where you live. All of these things make you more vulnerable. So what's happening locally? Well, if you've been watching the news, opening a newspaper, you can't help but see Clairton air pollution coming up almost daily now, and especially since late December. You probably saw the news, you probably experienced it yourself. At least 6 days of very, very poor air quality. And so these are just some headlines that you've seen where we had this very long stretched inversion. Well, inversion doesn't cause air pollution, of course. But when you have an inversion, who knows what an inversion is? Okay, so most of you do. But for those who don't, normally when you go up through the atmosphere, the air is getting colder the higher you go. But during an inversion, you have this flip-flop where a layer of warm air is trapping a layer of cooler air. And any pollution that is coming out of the tailpipe of a vehicle or out of the smokestack of industry is getting trapped there. So while inversion isn't causing the air pollution, it is not allowing it to properly dissipate. And then it's getting trapped there closer to ground level where you're breathing, where your children are playing, and all of those things. Now, after this was happening, a lot of chatter on social media saying, you know, what is the health department doing? The Allegheny County Health Department has an air quality program that is in charge of monitoring and regulating air quality in Allegheny County. What were they doing during this stretch of poor air quality to alleviate the problem? What was industry doing to alleviate the problem? It didn't seem like much other than giving warnings to say, this is being caused by inversion. And it looks like the industry is operating as they should. Well, that was of no reassurance or comfort to any of us that were living through this. So, what do we need to do? Here are some action items. First of all, the health department needs to address our air pollution from an acute exposure standpoint and from a chronic. When you have these air pollution episodes happening for days on end, this is an acute exposure. There is an air pollution episode regulation on the books in Allegheny County. It has not been updated in decades. The levels are woefully inadequate to protect public health, and in fact, there is not even an action level for PM 2.5. So it's not that they had no regulation in order to do something about this problem back in December. It's that the regulation just was of no use. There weren't even curtailment plans from industry that they could have put into action. So that is one thing that the health department needs to do, and they have actually committed to do, was to update these regulations. We need to be sure they're doing that as quick as possible because we know that an inversion will happen again. It's just a matter of time. What else do we need to do? The rotten egg odor that we're all so familiar with is the chronic issue. This is hydrogen sulfide. It only comes from a few different sources, and the biggest source by far in Allegheny County, and in fact in all of Pennsylvania, is Clairton Coke Works. This hydrogen sulfide mainly comes from those fugitive emissions coming from all different sources at the facility. There is a monitor in Liberty measuring hydrogen sulfide, and roughly 50 times a year for the past 6 or 7 years, this hydrogen sulfide standard has been violated. The health department has committed to reopening the local coke oven regulations in order to get at this problem, which will not only hopefully help to reduce hydrogen sulfide, but also other pollutants like fine particulates, benzene, sulfur dioxide, which are known carcinogens and have other health effects associated with them. They made that commitment, though, in May of 2018. It is now January of 2020. We need to see more progress. So, when you're having a bad air day, when you are smelling these things, there are two things that you need to be doing. One, going up to the Smell Pittsburgh app, which you can get on your smartphone, created by the Create Lab at Carnegie Mellon. You can go in, you can rank your odor from 1 to 5. You can put some commentary on what it smells like. That gets, you get that on a map, then you can see what other people are saying. But you also need to call the health department or email them with more details so they can send an inspector out. They've already said they're not going to do that for the Smell Pittsburgh app. The other thing you want to do is sign up for these Allegheny alerts. The health department over the last year has gotten a little bit better on notifying on the community when there are air quality issues. And one way they're doing that is through these Allegheny alerts. You go up and you fill in your information. This is all kinds of information for issues all over the county, for things about the parks, etc. But getting on here will also give you information about air quality. Okay, real quick, diesel particulate matter is one of the greatest inhaled air toxics in the region. And there are things that we can be doing right now. Very simply, we can be making sure that people are following the no idling law. This is a Pennsylvania law. Diesel vehicles are only supposed to idle for 5 minutes in an hour, although you see it happening all the time. Make sure that your child's school district knows about this, that the school buses aren't idling, Port Authority buses aren't idling, large delivery trucks aren't idling. That's one simple thing we can be doing. We can also be trying to clean up diesel vehicles. These are just 3 funds off the top of my head that we could be using to clean up diesel vehicles and equipment in our county. The county's Clean Air Fund has $12 million in it, driving Pennsylvania forward, and the Clean Diesel and DERA funding on a federal level. So these are just some quick ideas of things we can be doing to take action right now. So thank you very much.